Have you ever wondered why you sometimes react in unexpected ways, even to yourself? Perhaps you've noticed thoughts or emotions that you prefer not to admit. That which you avoid or deny is what Carl Jung called the shadow self. The shadow self is that part of our psyche that we don't want to see, that we hide from others and ourselves. Those traits that don't fit the image we want to project. But here's the true mystery. The more we avoid our shadow, the more power we give it. And this power can manifest in destructive ways if we don't recognize it. Imagine looking at yourself in the mirror. You see your reflection, right? However, there's more than meets the eye. That hidden part is the shadow. What would happen if, instead of avoiding it, we faced and accepted it? This is a crucial question that will guide you throughout this video. What relationship does the shadow have with personal success? How can we transform what we fear most into our greatest strength? Carl Jung argued that to grow and reach our full potential, we must confront what scares us within ourselves. Throughout this journey, I will guide you through a process where we will see how accepting our darkness can lead us to the light. To better understand the concept of the shadow, we first need to delve into its origin. Jung discovered that not only conscious experiences shape our psyche, but also those we repress. From childhood, we learn to behave according to what is expected of us. We are told what is good and what is bad, what we should do and what we should avoid. Everything that doesn't fit that ideal image we try to build is hidden in our shadow. However, what we hide does not disappear. It remains buried and often acts from the unconscious. You might think that by hiding your negative impulses or conflicting desires, you simply eliminate them. But the truth is that they are always present, influencing your behavior in ways you can't even imagine. Have you ever reacted disproportionately to a small situation, or felt jealous without a clear reason? It's likely that those emotions are linked to your shadow. Often, intense emotions that seem disproportionate are signals that something hidden in our psyche is trying to surface. This is where the concept of accepting the darkness comes in. Jung invites us to stop fighting against those repressed parts of our personality and instead integrate them. By accepting our shadow, we stop giving it so much power over us. This doesn't mean giving in to our negative impulses, but learning to recognize and manage them constructively. But how does the shadow manifest in everyday life? One of the most common ways is through projections. We project our denied traits onto other people. That is, what we don't accept in ourselves, we see in others. If you've ever felt especially bothered by someone's behavior, it's possible that what really bothers you is something you can't accept in yourself. A classic example of projection is when we criticize someone for being selfish when we are actually denying our own tendency towards selfishness. The shadow forces us to see in others what we don't want to see in ourselves. This projection prevents us from truly knowing ourselves and keeps us in constant conflict with our environment. The integration of the shadow, therefore, not only improves our relationship with ourselves, but also with others. When we stop projecting our flaws and weaknesses onto others, we begin to see the world more clearly. Our relationships become more authentic, and we can better understand the motivations and feelings of those around us. Now, this sounds like a difficult task, and it is. The process of confronting the shadow is not simple. It requires courage to look within and see what has been buried for years, perhaps even decades. But the reward is enormous. By facing our shadow, we free ourselves from many fears, insecurities, and destructive patterns that we have repeated without realizing it. In the next few minutes, we will explore how the shadow can be an ally on our path to success. We will see examples of how historical figures and public personalities have achieved great things not by denying their darkness, but by integrating it and using it to their advantage. We will learn that success does not come from being perfect, but from being complete. Are you ready for this journey? I invite you to look within and discover parts of yourself that you may not have known existed. Remember, darkness is not something to fear. On the contrary, it is the place where the greatest transformations can occur. If you found this interesting so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your thoughts in the comments about what we've discussed. What aspects of your shadow do you think you've been avoiding? Share your experience, and let's continue exploring this fascinating path to self-knowledge together. To understand how the shadow impacts our personal development, it is essential to talk about archetypes. According to Carl Jung, archetypes are behavioral patterns rooted in our collective unconscious. These archetypes guide our experiences, and one of the most powerful in this context is the hero. The hero is a key figure in the process of individuation, the path to becoming complete and authentic beings. Throughout this process, the hero must face various obstacles. These obstacles are nothing more than representations of the hidden aspects of their psyche, particularly their shadow. In the hero's journey, the shadow often manifests as an enemy or dark force that seems to be outside them, but actually symbolizes their own repressed side, what they fear or reject in themselves. This pattern of the hero facing their shadow is not exclusive to myths or ancient stories. We experience it in our daily lives. Often, the enemies we face in the external world, whether problems at work, conflicts with close people, or even our own fears, are actually manifestations of our shadow. They are parts of ourselves that we have ignored or repressed for a long time, and that, to grow and succeed, we must confront. Accepting the shadow, therefore, implies accepting our role as heroes in our own lives. The challenges we face are not there to defeat us, but to help us grow. By confronting and accepting our shadow, we release a great power that was trapped in those repressed aspects of our personality, and it is precisely this power that can lead us to success. Now, how can we recognize our shadow and begin to integrate it into our lives? A fundamental step is to pay attention to our exaggerated emotional reactions. If you have ever reacted disproportionately to an apparently insignificant situation, it is likely that the shadow is at play. For example, if you become enraged when someone contradicts you or feel extremely jealous without an apparent reason, these emotions could be connected to aspects of your personality that you have been denying or avoiding. Another way to identify the shadow is to observe repetitive patterns in your behavior. Perhaps you discover that you make the same mistakes over and over again, despite knowing they hurt you. These patterns, although frustrating, can be signals that your shadow is acting from the unconscious, guiding your decisions in ways you don't see. Instead of punishing yourself or feeling guilty about these behaviors, the key is to observe them with curiosity and try to understand what hidden aspects of yourself are trying to surface. The integration of the shadow is not a quick or easy process. It is not about fixing something broken within you, but about knowing yourself more deeply and accepting all the parts that make up your being. This includes both the qualities you consider positive and those you have rejected or feared. A crucial aspect of this process is self-compassion. Confronting our shadow can be uncomfortable and often painful. It is easy to fall into self-criticism, judging yourself harshly for your weaknesses or repressed desires. But it is essential to remember that everyone has a shadow. There is no human being completely free of hidden or repressed aspects. What sets us apart is our ability to face them with courage and compassion, rather than continuing to deny or repress them. A useful practice to begin working with the shadow is reflective writing. Dedicate some time each day to write about your emotions, reactions, and behavior patterns. By putting into words what you are feeling or experiencing, you give shape to those aspects that usually remain hidden in your unconscious. By bringing them to the surface, you will have taken the first step toward their integration. The process of confronting and accepting the shadow can be challenging, but it is also profoundly liberating. By integrating the shadow, we stop projecting our weaknesses and fears onto others and begin to live in a more authentic and complete way. This authenticity not only improves our relationship with ourselves, but also with others. Our relationships become more genuine as we stop fighting, against aspects of our own psyche and instead accept them. So far, we have discussed the shadow from a theoretical perspective, but how does this process manifest in real life? There are many examples of people who, by facing their shadow, not only overcame personal obstacles, but also achieved extraordinary levels of success. Through these examples, we can see how accepting our dark parts allows us to grow and transform our lives. One of the most notable examples is that of the renowned psychologist Carl Jung, who developed the theory of the shadow. Jung did not arrive at these concepts from a position of perfection or enlightenment, but through his own confrontation with his shadow. For years, he experienced what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. Jung delved into the deepest parts of his psyche, exploring his fears and repressed aspects. The process was painful and terrifying, but it allowed him not only to understand himself more completely, but also to develop his theories about the unconscious and archetypes, which have transformed modern psychology. Another example can be found in the stories of great leaders. Winston Churchill, for example, was known for his determination and strength during the darkest moments of World War II. However, Churchill also struggled throughout his life with what he called his black dog, a metaphor for describing his deep depression. Instead of denying or repressing this part of himself, Churchill recognized it as a shadow that accompanied him. Although his depression hit him hard, he was able to transform that internal struggle into a source of resilience. His speeches and ability to guide a nation in times of crisis reflect the integration of his shadow, the ability to find strength in his internal pain and darkness. In the art world, another clear example is Vincent van Gogh. Van Gogh struggled throughout his life with mental health issues, including episodes of deep depression and emotional crises. Although he never achieved recognition during his lifetime, his pain and suffering gave rise to some of the most impactful and expressive works in art history. Through his art, Van Gogh not only faced his shadow, but also transformed it into something beautiful and profoundly human. These examples show us that success and greatness are not reserved for those who seem to have everything under control or who have overcome their weaknesses. On the contrary, many of the most influential and creative people have achieved what they have precisely because they faced their shadow. Instead of hiding or rejecting those uncomfortable parts of themselves, they recognized, integrated, and, in many cases, transformed them into a source of power and creativity. This process is not exclusive to historical figures or world-renowned leaders. Each of us can face our shadow in our daily lives and transform that encounter into an opportunity for growth. Think about it this way. What aspect of yourself have you been repressing or avoiding? Maybe it's a fear you don't want to admit, or a desire that makes you uncomfortable. Maybe it's an insecurity that you try to hide under a facade of confidence. The integration of the shadow not only improves our relationship with ourselves, but also with others. Often we project our shadow onto the people around us. For example, if you have an unrecognized fear of being vulnerable, you might project it onto others, perceiving them as cold or distant. By working with our shadow, we not only free ourselves from these projections, but also improve our relationships. To integrate the shadow, it is important to adopt an attitude of curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of seeing our weaknesses or dark aspects as something that must be eliminated, we can see them as parts of ourselves that simply need to be understood. Every emotion, every desire, and every impulse has a reason for being. Even what we consider negative can teach us something valuable about who we are and what we need to grow. A powerful tool for this process is meditation or mindful reflection. Dedicating time to being silent with yourself, observing your thoughts and emotions without judging them, can be a first step in bringing to light the most hidden aspects of your shadow. By being in direct contact with your inner self, you begin to notice patterns and emotions that you previously ignored. And by accepting them, you can begin to integrate them in a healthy way. Now that we have explored what the shadow is and how it affects our path to success, it's time to talk about practical strategies for integrating it into our daily lives. The process of confronting and working with the shadow does not happen overnight. but with dedication, we can begin to recognize it and make it a part of us. Here are some useful ways to start this journey. The first step in integrating the shadow is to develop the ability to observe yourself without passing judgment. This process involves being aware of your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, especially in moments when you feel uncomfortable or out of control. The shadow often comes to light in situations of stress or conflict, so pay attention to how you react in these moments. For example, if you find yourself reacting with disproportionate anger in a discussion, instead of blaming the other person or trying to justify your reaction, stop and ask yourself, what is triggering this response within me? This simple act of self-observation allows you to identify the repressed emotions or fears that might be behind that reaction. Reflective writing is a powerful tool for exploring the shadow. By writing, you can bring to light thoughts and emotions that you might not dare to express in another way. To work with the shadow through writing, dedicate a few minutes each day to write about your emotional reactions, internal conflicts, or repetitive behavior patterns. A useful technique is the dialogue with the shadow. In this exercise, imagine that your shadow is a separate entity, a part of you with whom you can speak. Ask it what it wants to tell you or why it is reacting in a certain way. This practice can help you give voice to the repressed parts of your being and, through dialogue, begin to integrate them. Jung believed that we often project our shadow onto others. This means that the qualities or behaviors we criticize or detest in other people are usually a reflection of aspects of ourselves that we have not recognized. For example, if you feel a deep aversion to someone you consider arrogant, it may be that this arrogance reflects a repressed desire in yourself to be more confident or assertive. One way to work with the shadow is to be aware of projections. The next time you find yourself criticizing or judging someone harshly, ask yourself, am I projecting something of myself onto this person? What part of myself am I rejecting by making this judgment? This exercise can help you identify aspects of your shadow that are asking to be recognized. Jung considered dreams as a gateway to the unconscious, and therefore to the shadow. In dreams, the shadow can appear in symbolic forms, as characters that represent repressed aspects of your psyche. Keep a dream journal to record and analyze what happens in your dream world. If you dream of a dark figure or an enemy chasing you, for example, you might ask yourself what aspect of yourself that figure could be representing. Is it a repressed fear? A denied desire? By exploring dreams, you can discover important messages from the unconscious that help you integrate the shadow. It is important to find a balance between recognizing the shadow and cultivating your positive qualities. A good way to do this is through gratitude and self-compassion. This practice will help you maintain a balanced perspective and not feel overwhelmed by the darker aspects of your psyche. Finally, working with the shadow can be a difficult process to undertake alone. A therapist specializing in depth psychology or Jungian psychology can be of great help in guiding you on this journey. By having an external perspective, you can gain a deeper understanding of the internal patterns and conflicts that you cannot see on your own. The process of integrating the shadow is not easy, but it is a path of profound transformation. As you face your darkest and most repressed aspects, you begin to unlock an inner power that was hidden. This power is what will allow you to achieve success in an authentic way, aligned with your true self. Throughout this journey into the mystery of the shadow self, we have explored the depths of our psyche and the importance of accepting the hidden parts of ourselves. The shadow, that dark corner we often fear to face, is also the source of our personal growth and true authenticity. In today's society, where perfection is often an unattainable goal, understanding and accepting our shadow becomes an act of courage and liberation. Carl Jung taught us that by rejecting our shadows, we not only give them more power but also limit our potential. Projecting our insecurities onto others distances us from authentic connections, preventing us from seeing the truth in our relationships. However, by facing our shadow, we begin to deactivate its negative influence, turning it into an ally on our path to success and personal fulfillment. The hero's journey is an archetype that repeats itself in our lives. Every challenge we face, every conflict, and every fear are opportunities in disguise to know ourselves better. When we look at our shadow, we discover not only our fears, but also our strengths. The courage to face these repressed aspects transforms us into more complete versions of ourselves. This integration is not an easy process. It requires self-compassion, reflection, and at times the support of others. However, it is a journey worth undertaking. The stories of historical figures like Carl Jung, Winston Churchill, and Vincent van Gogh are clear examples of how accepting the shadow can lead to extraordinary achievements. These individuals did not deny their darkness. Instead, they embraced it, allowing their internal struggle to become a source of creativity, resilience, and leadership. Their success was not the result of perfection, but of authenticity and the integration of all their parts. Similarly, each of us has the ability to transform our lives by facing our shadow. Self-compassion and curiosity are essential tools in this process. As we develop the ability to observe ourselves without judgment, we begin to unravel the hidden patterns that govern our behavior. Reflective writing, meditation, and dream analysis are practices that can guide us on this path, helping us understand and accept the parts of ourselves that we have avoided. Moreover, it is crucial to remember that the shadow should not be seen solely as something negative. In our darkness also lies a rich source of creativity, passion, and energy. When we accept and embrace these aspects, we discover that our shadow can propel us forward, providing the strength needed to face life with authenticity. Finally, I invite each reader to reflect on their own shadow. What aspects of yourself have you been avoiding? What repressed emotions are asking to be heard? This journey of self-discovery can be transformative, not only for you, but also for your relationships and the world around you. Accepting our shadow is a path to freedom, a journey that allows us to live more fully and authentically. In conclusion, facing and accepting our shadow is an act of self-love and courage. Let us not fear our darkness, but seek in it the light that can guide us toward a richer and more meaningful life. By doing so, we not only free ourselves from the shackles of self-reproach, but also discover the unlimited potential that resides within each of us. The journey toward integrating the shadow does not end here. It is a continuous process that accompanies us throughout our lives, providing us with the tools necessary to grow and flourish in the authenticity of our being.